performance of 18th century country dancing and courtly music, brought to you by us, the Brisbane Baroque players, and our special guest dance Kaleidoscope, here at the really beautiful Thomas Dixon Centre, and provided for you by free care of Metro Band's Bands in Parks program. So my name is Yvette, and today I'm proud to share with you our love of all things Baroque through dance and music. We are Brisbane Baroque players, and we are a Brisbane-based ensemble that specialise in historically informed performances of Baroque music using period-style instruments. That's not Baroque. We are known for our concerts that feature both well-known and lesser-known Baroque pieces. We love to share information about our instruments, information about the composers and their works, and information about the cultural context of our music. Our guests dance Kaleidoscope today. They're a group that dances mostly English folk dances, and such dances are also called Playford or English country dances. Dance Kaleidoscope perform at Newstead House, the Woodford Folk Festival, and similar places around Brisbane as the opportunity arises. Their age group ranges from 10 to mid-70s. Not sure if we've got that spread today. They dance because they enjoy it, and those who perform do so as it gives them an opportunity to continue to polish their technique and occasionally to dress up in period costume. So today we aim to bring to you the joyful interplay between music and dance of the Baroque era. In the 18th century, an English country dance was widely regarded as the most popular form of social dancing across all ranks of society, from court to the cottage, as they say. Dances typically formed long wise sets, 2 lines of couples facing each other, though variations included other formations such as circles or squares. The steps were intentionally few and easy, designed so that the movements appeared unaffected, modest and graceful, and allowed all to participate regardless of skill level. The dance's happy simplicity, the sociability and the accessibility made it an essential element at assemblies and gatherings, often serving as both an icebreaker and an elegant platform for genteel interaction and courtship. It was, as we see in period movies, the only time that young people could talk out of earshot of their chaperones. And I'd like to hand over to John. John is our guru about all this.
Oh, I don't think I'd say you. Hi everybody, my name is John. I have the happy coincidence of being part of both groups. No, I'm sorry, I don't dance, but I play modern instruments with Dance Kaleidoscope, and I play Baroque instruments. So I am one of the inspiration behind this event. Now that our dancers have caught their breath, I'd love to tell you about that first piece, which is called Tythe Pig. It was first published in Playford's Dancing Master in 1695, and as you saw this lively long ways dance, it was progressive and it was much beloved in English ballrooms. More recently, this particular dance that we just did has found fame in the 2005 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and yes, it's the opening scene at the Meryton Assembly before we meet the Bingleys and of course Mr. Darcy. And that arrangement is inspired by that exact arrangement as well. Not only is that dance a fascinating window into the music of Jane Austen's world, it's one of our favourite dances as the Dance Kaleidoscope dance group called Sounds Austen. Next, we would like to travel even further back in time for our next piece. This one's called Grimstock, a stately long ways progressive dance. First published in 1650s, it gained renewed popularity through its appearance in the real Pride and Prejudice in the 1995 BBC series. But what makes today's performance special is our arrangement. So we're hoping to illustrate the evolution of this dance, tuned from its most simple harpsichord origins, and then gradually building as new instruments join in to showcase how the music could have been performed back in the day. This would have been very similar to how many dances were originally danced, with just the top couple starting and then gradually moving down the set. And as they moved down the set, sometimes we had to keep playing as musicians until it moved all the way back up to the top of the set again. So we hope you enjoy Brimstock. Yep.
moments, we'll move into a different world from the lively English country dances you've just heard. Sean and I are going to perform some selections from Thesaurus Musicus, a published collection of instrumental duets from the late 17th century. Unlike the communal, often rustic dances found in the English Dancing Master, from which all our English country dances are found, the pieces that we'll play reflect a more refined, courtly tastes of the upper classes. The styles you'll hear, the bourrée, the minuet, the gavotte, they're all French dance forms, which were all the rage in England at the time. French culture, fashion, and especially dance had enormous influence on the English aristocratic society, and these pieces show that in full measure. So these works were written as duets for two treble instruments, so Sean and I will perform these short works for you on oboe and violin. We hope you can feel the elegant air of formality, a glimpse into the drawing rooms and dance salons of Restoration England.
Okay, so from a musician's point of view, the world of the 18th century dance was truly unique in that each town or each region developed its own distinctive dance styles, and most musicians often learned dance tunes by ear. As these musicians travelled from place to place, they gathered an extensive repertoire, almost an encyclopedia of dance music, ready to be played at any moment, and actually anywhere, like in fields or in salons or anywhere that they could have 6 people to form a set. As fashions changed though, musicians had to continually expand their knowledge to accompany new dances. Fortunately, most of these tunes were compiled and published by dancing masters or figures like Thomas Playford, allowing us today to access the sheet music, and in fact most of this stuff can be found on the internet. It's really, really cool. I have a printout of the Dancing Master from 1657 sitting in my office at home. To this day, each tune remains uniquely tied to each specific dance. I sometimes think that musicians of the day were also endurance athletes in that they had to outlast the dancers. For example, if the first couple began at a dance and there were 30 couples, that might mean that the tune had to be played through 60 times. So you got 30 times to get to the end and then 30 times to get back again. And each of those times, it was on you as a musician to make it different, or the group of musicians to make it different. Unfortunately, today we're only dancing each of them 6 times, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And in most, and adding to this, the limited space in most assembly halls meant that musicians were often positioned high above the crowd in like a gallery or a balcony, right above the presence at the front of the hall, at the top of the hall, probably to keep them safe from the crush of dancers and patrons, but it would have been a very tricky, cramped job indeed, and definitely no space for cellos or really harpsichords. Bassoons and oboes and violins would have ruled the day. Next, I'd like to invite our dancers up to form some sets for Beggar Boy. We're going to take your imagination back to those bustling halls and lively gatherings of the 18th century. Beggar Boy is a set dance for 3 couples that's been part of the English country dance repertoire since the 1650s. This piece offers not just rhythmic intrigue, but also a glimpse into the enduring popularity of communal dance, which transcended class and century. And then for our 4th piece, we're going to play a piece called Hole in the Wall, which was first published in 1698. It brings together the best parts of our Baroque theatre and dance. Composed by the great Purcell, Henry Purcell, it's famous as both a country dance and a hornpipe that was featured in his opera Abdelaziz. So for this performance, we're blending together the original tune from the Dancing Master with Purcell's own arrangement that he had in the opera to give you a really rare treat, a dialogue between sort of popular and classical traditions, just as like the audience might have enjoyed in Purcell's own time. So we hope you enjoy Beggar Boy and then Hole in the Wall.
shift from music written to accompany dance to music that evokes the spirit of dance at the keyboard. So I love having an opportunity to show off our musicians who normally get stuck with maybe the dull supporting parts, but this is now our time for our harpsichordist Sandy to shine. So she's performing some works by Nicolas Ciré. Now, he was a French composer working in the early 18th century, and like his more famous contemporary, Francois Couperin, I have a French name, but my accent is terrible, I apologise. He wrote elegant harpsichord pieces deeply rooted in the French tradition. So while these works weren't necessarily meant to be danced to, they borrow the rhythms, forms and gestures of the court dances. And so that is the minuet, the sarabande, the gig, those ones. And they translate them into richly ornamented, expressive solo pieces. So let's hear our harpsichordist Sandy play a pair of Ciré's pieces. And yes, it is a treat to hear the harpsichord on its own, without it being the creepy music from Adam's Family.
first recorded dance treatise, which includes choreography and tunes to go along with the choreography. At the time, dancing masters like Domenico da Piacenza, who wrote this piece, would have carried small instruments that they could fit in the pocket of their coat to accompany the dances that they were teaching. So recorders were a popular choice, or double recorders, which in fact were more common than standard ones in the medieval era, or small fiddles. By the Baroque era, the pochette violin come into fashion. Pochette, which is pocket in French, which was a very, very small body violin. Wasn't very loud, but carried anywhere. So without further ado, here's the first tune.
amazing. And something that you can't see that I could is that Josh was actually reading off some of the original manuscript. Do you reckon we could show everybody? I didn't want to do it while he was performing, but it is incredible, the detail in the music. There are staff lines like normal, but he was showing me that there are sometimes like shapes of little hands that you have to do, and a beginning and a closing. So that's what he was reading of, the actual original.
Zoom in, see like a little hand pointing at the notes that you need to play.
It's really incredible. Let's another round of applause. I often do historic reenactment and accidentally leave my watch on. And the standard response to anything when you're doing historic reenactment and you forget is, if they had it, they would have used it. So, if they had iPads, they would have used them, absolutely. We're now going to invite you to enjoy a piece called Child Grove. So I'll invite our dancers back onto the stage if they'd like to come and form sets, please. Child Grove, and we flip these two around for very obvious reasons. I'll tell you why. Child Grove was first published in 1701. This piece is challenging both musicians and dancers with its variety of expression. It's got some really lovely legato lines and then some really boppy staccato lines as well. Expect to hear every section of our ensemble shine as we bring Child Grove's rich melodies and lively rhythms to life. And then finally, we're going to finish off with one of the dancers' favourites and our favourites as well, the gentle wit of Mr. Beveridge's Maggot. Now, this dates from 1695, at a time when the word maggot referred to a whimsical tune or a fancy, or an earworm that gets sort of stuck in your head. So they were literally called maggots on the page. This was popularised by its inclusion in the 1995 BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice as well. And this piece combines stylish melody with playful rhythmic twists, inviting both nostalgia and light-hearted fun. And if you know the series, it's the one that has it's got like a euphonium that goes bah, bah, bah. My kids laugh every time because they're all brass players. It's very offensive, but there's no brass players here today. So we hope you enjoy Child Grove and then Mr. Beveridge's Maggot.
end of our program, our little journey through dance, dancing through the Baroque, plus a little sojourn into the medieval period. But that was definitely worth it. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to Metro Vans and Parks for allowing us for giving us opportunity to deliver you this concert for free. Our next Baroque Players concert will be at St Augustine's Anglican Church at Hamilton on the 26th of October. Check us out on our socials, Instagram and Facebook, for more details about what the program will be and how that will unfold. It's been a pleasure to play for you today and to perform with Dance Kaleidoscope. And it's, the best thing about performing is having an appreciative audience. So we actually want to continue a tradition that we have when we do these concerts through Metro Vans and Parks program. We love to get a photo of all the performers with our audience in the background doing a bit of a yahoo. So if you don't mind, we have our photographer Laura. So our musicians and our dancers, we cluster around, and if our audience can stand up, we're all going to give a goofy smile to do a big group photo. I think the dancers may be in the aisles, to be not on the edge because the camera won't see that. Okay?
Website. If you put Dance Kaleidoscope Brisbane into Google, you will find us, and my contact details are on there. Just don't go for the American one, they're nothing like us.